We're going to stay with that story. South Africa is hosting quite a major international naval exercise this week, which brings about naval forces from China, Russia and Iran. The exercise, previously known as Exercise Morsi III, has now been renamed Will for Peace, with China taking the lead role. The South African National Defence Force says the drills are aimed at strengthening maritime safety, improving joint operational capabilities, as well as protecting key international shipping routes. For more on this, let's now welcome defence expert Mr. Dean Wingrin. Dean, it's such a pleasure, sir. Welcome to SA Today. So this is being touted as quite a critical exercise, as you heard in my intro, to strengthening maritime safety and improving joint operational capabilities on our shipping routes. I mean, we know it's mostly BRICS members that are taking part. Tell us more. A very good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon to you and the listeners. Yes, there's no doubt that the Navy has really been looking forward to this exercise. Due to years and decades of underfunding, they haven't had the opportunity to go to sea as much as they should. And so thus they take every opportunity they can get to go to sea. And when you can add in the ability to learn from other navies, it just makes that so much better.
But Dean, I mean, please paint us a picture. What actually happens during these drills, and how does South Africa, the South African maritime as well as naval teams directly benefit through this exercise? I just heard you in Simon's Town earlier on for the start of these drills. Tell us more.
That's right. And these drills, they help the navies and the South African Navy, other navies, when they need to work together on the high seas. The high seas is a very unforgiving place. So you don't want to suddenly start learning how to communicate and how to operate together then. So it's always a good idea that when you go on peacekeeping missions, anti-piracy missions, and anti-fishing and illegal and unregulated fishing exercises, and you meet up with a foreign navy while on patrol, you already got those basic protocols down, such as communication protocols, how to operate together. And that's the main focus of this type of exercise. Sort of many of these navies haven't had the opportunity to exercise together all that often. South Africa is very much down to the south of Africa. These other navies don't share a maritime border with South Africa. So they've had to travel quite a far distance to get here. And so they'll be sharing these lessons learned, best practices, and so on. And South Africa, I think, will be learning a lot more from these other nations than what they will be able to take from South Africa in a general sense, although obviously South Africa is not a minnow as such in these operations, and they will be able to at least assist the other navies in lessons learned.
Absolutely, much needed assistance there, Dean. I mean, I suppose important as well, taking into account some of the global attacks on some of those routes. I mean, we've seen some during the past year. I mean, is our personnel even trained, properly trained, adequately trained on such reaction should, of course, the need arise? We often hear that our security forces are either under-resourced or barely operational due to a myriad of issues. They call it budgetary and other issues. But I mean, talking about the anti-piracy and emergency evacuation procedures, these are things we don't get to normally hear about when it comes to our naval forces.
That's right. And these are the very basics of naval operations. It's the lower tier of activities, which then goes right up to, actual warfare, missiles, gunnery, and so on. So, but doing these and getting experience in this is a direct correlation of your budget. And if you don't have the budget like the South African Navy hasn't had in the past decade, then you aren't able to go to sea as much as what you want. And if you don't go to sea, you can't qualify your crews. And if you can't qualify your crews, you also can't, not only is it a vicious circle in not being able to go to sea, but they don't get the skills and the experience that they need.
Absolutely, and I suppose that training is quite critical in order to ensure that you've got the right personnel that is at the forefront of of course, these teams. But Dean, I'm sure you have seen some criticism about these drills, some saying it's due to a current standoff or tensions with the United States. You were in Simon Towns, as I was alluding to earlier on. Are these shared sentiments among those in attendance, though?
Yes, this particular exercise has been held as a BRICS military exercise. Now, BRICS is purely an economic grouping of countries. Particularly the founding members and also the additional members that have joined subsequently to its founding, some of them they don't share the same political views. Some of them share a border which every now and again gets quite hot. So so these countries have got together because they recognize the benefit of their country trading internationally and the economic benefits that can accrue to the country. It is not a political grouping and most certainly not a military alliance. So when it comes to South Africa's unique geopolitical positioning, particularly since Trump's America has taken a very dim view of South Africa's alleged internal policies. So America, Europe, EU, and China are South Africa's biggest trading partners. Now you look at South Africa has got one foot in that camp. And then South Africa's got another foot in the other camp with it. It's a more political alliance with Russia, which there's very little trade going on between the two countries, with sanctioned Iran, which South Africa has little to no trade activities. And we also do not share a maritime border. So one must look at the reasons for and the optics of this exercise. There's no doubt that there's benefits for the Navy itself, but what repercussions is this going to have for South Africa as a whole in the greater geopolitical context?
And a very quick one, Dean. I mean, I'm looking at a picture here. Maybe if you can tell us what kind of weaponry is also being showcased during this week of course, of these drills. I'm seeing a general view there of the Chinese guided missile destroyer, the Tangshan L, the Russian covert Stoichly ship, as well as the South African SAS Amatola. What are these?
Yes, these are very advanced warships. Some of them are a little bit newer than others, but particularly the Russian vessels and the Chinese vessels, they are really brimming with modern high-tech technology, the latest in missiles and guided weapon systems. South Africa is also the SAS Amatola is taking part, and that is coming up to about almost 20 years in service now since commissioning. So it's definitely due for a refit and an upgrade. Obviously, that is budget dependent again. I always seem to fall back on that. But it's a very capable ship for constabulary duties for anti-piracy, anti-fishing, border patrol, and as well as our new inshore multi-mission patrol vessels, which is also very much for inshore patrol, but not for warfare as such. The Iranian vessel is also fairly modern. Weapon systems on paper are quite good. How they will be in practice is yet to be seen. And then, of course, we got the UAE with the Go-Wind corvette, which arrived, quite a surprise, arrived yesterday in South Africa. And from what I understand, the UAE vessel will not physically take part in the actual exercises at sea, but they're certainly here in an observer status.
And they're certainly going back and returning where they came from, did in case we are being accused of accepting weapons from our BRICS neighbors. That's where we're going to leave it. Thank you so much for that insightful discussion with Mr. Dean Wingrin, who is a defense expert there on the current international naval drills taking place in Simonstown.